you got one finger pointed at somebody else, but then there's three fingers pointed back at you, kind of thing.
Don't you point that finger at me.
Oh, why? What an entrance.
Welcome to another Bright News discussion. And today I got a special guest, man. I'm here with Surit. So my brother Surit, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing fine, Shannon. How are you doing?
Good. I'm good, bro. Yeah, man. We were just talking about you know, sort of finding a balance in life in general. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We were talking about because we're in the Lenten season and everything, and some people have already begun, had already started the fasting, and then today is the beginning of Ash Wednesday for Catholics, and other other denominations. So I was thinking about this whole thing of how do you not go too far to the left, too far to the right. You want to, yes, you want to fast. Yes, you want to do things, like, breaking certain habits that you have and everything, the vices and all of that. But like, you don't want to be, it's almost like, if you weren't called to be a monk or confined, or a hermit or something. Well, like my calling as a father, my calling as a husband, or my calling as a man, a bachelor or whatever. How should I navigate that, that whole thing, because, a lot of people will tell you, okay, you got to give up everything, you know what I'm saying? And don't listen to certain things. I only want you to listen to, Gregorian chant, you know what I'm saying? Or Byzantine, Byzantine choir music, you know what I'm saying? And just sit there and don't say nothing and light your candles and, burn some incense, you know what I mean? Or people will say, well, it's okay to, just take a breather. And sometimes we have to, we don't have to do everything. You don't have to give up meat. You don't have to give up dairy products. It's all right. Just try to work on yourself, you know what I'm saying, and whatever. So yeah, I guess I'll start with that. Like, how do you I don't want to call it, I mean, is it a balance? Should we call it that, or
Or
what
you
would you?
could say it, how to be on the right path,
Yeah,
so straying away from the path.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I get I get what you're talking about. One thing that's very important is that a lot of Christians tend to, like, especially given the technology that exists in our day, a lot of people tend to stay online and practice Christianity from the by looking at the internet, like, right, like a lot of young converts to the faith tend to look towards online influencers, like people or YouTubers, or big some of these big religious YouTubers.
Mhm.
So that's okay. You should of course listen to them and gain the knowledge that they have received from reading the early church fathers, or all of these saints and whatnot. But
Mm,
at the same time, it's very important to have a one-to-one connection with your local priest,
mm,
because remember, like, being Girardians, we know what human beings are, and human beings are individual. We're not
mm,
atomized. We're not meant to be on this metaverse and
mm,
be hooked into like a matrix system where where we get our religious information from from the grid. We're
mm,
supposed to have this one-to-one connection with the priest, or monk, or whoever is there, or even like an elderly brother, or someone in the faith.
yeah.
And that's very important. And by having that one-to-one relation with all of these individuals at your local congregation, you
Mm,
will also know the real problems that exist, not the trending problems that
mm,
are going on the internet, right?
yeah.
But the real actual problems that exist at your local level,
Yeah.
and everything. And you will have a much more a tendency towards empathy. You
Mm,
will learn to empathize with those around you, because we tend to empathize with whenever we see the human face, flesh and
mm,
bones,
mm,
when we see the problems they're going through, or when we can relate to them,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a very tricky mimetic thing, like,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, sure, like, whenever we get close to somebody, we tend to either love them a lot or
Mm,
even hate them a lot, like,
yeah.
get into mimetic rivalry a lot.
Yeah.
So when dealing with mimetic rivalry, and that's where the extreme part comes in, Shannon. You
Mm,
talked about extremes. You have
mm,
to when you are well versed in mimetic theory, or even have a basic understanding of mimetic theory,
mm,
you get to know pretty fast that the extremes of society, whether it's left or right wing or whatever, all of these extremes are mimetic reactions to one another.
yeah. Right.
So it's not very wise to base our faith on mimetic reactions that
Mm,
go extreme. That's
yeah.
not wise, because that's human judgment. But
Okay.
we want to follow God.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you say that because yesterday, Trump gave his, I think it was his first, you know, speech before Congress or whatever. And, I always find it humorous when whether it's a Republican or a Democrat president or whatever, you know, one side will stand and clap every time somebody says something, and the other group will sit there and be silent and be upset and putting up flat, this and that, you know what I'm saying? And you just see this whole like, dynamic where, it's like, he said, well, nothing I ever do will make them happy. Nothing that I do. You know what I'm saying? And then, the Republicans, all they do, yeah, 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 everything he says is right. Everything he says is, the right thing. And then when you look at you see the judges, on the Supreme Court, they don't say anything. They sit there, they don't clap, they don't stand, they just be stoic. They're stoic and kind of like, I don't have an opinion, on this type of thing. I know they do, but it's so maybe that's you know, and yes, it is the thing about mimesis that and I both of us have known about the work of Rene Girard for a very long time, whatever, and various things that he talks about. But you can easily forget how you can become mimetic, especially when you're in it. You know what I'm saying? If you're dealing with somebody that you're just like, man, I cannot stand this person. They get on my nerves. You know what I'm saying? Everything they do causes me to be irritated. You know what I'm saying? And then you're like, okay, but is why am I irritated with this person? Why does this person get on my nerves? Is it because I'm putting myself in a mimetic situation with them? You know, and then at the same time, where do I draw the line? If I say, okay, it's like, you try not to be mimetic, but at the same time, you're like, I don't want this person walking over me. I don't want this person doing certain things. Like, where's my cutoff? Where's my, pushback? I gotta say something, you know what I mean? Because otherwise they're just gonna keep doing it, you know what I'm saying? And they don't, you might say, well, you understand mimesis, you understand like how, it's a reciprocal thing and everything, but they don't, say they don't know about mimesis, you know what I'm saying? They don't know about how we imitate one another's desires and all of that type of stuff. So it's like you're aware of it and you're trying to be more Christ-like, you're trying to be more, patient and long suffering and hang in there and everything. But it's like, like, okay, like with Lent, you know what I mean? Okay, look, this is a time of penance, this is a time of fasting, this is a time to, heal and everything, but you're like, okay, I got to get up in the morning. I'm about to go to work and I got to deal with this MF today, or I got to deal with this project today. How am I going to deal with that? You know what I'm saying? Am I gonna, kick and yell and cuss and, everything? Or am I going to just say, okay, look, this is what I'm dealing with. I got to work, I got to, you know, do what I got to do. So how do I not be mimetic? How do I not be angry? How do I not be frustrated? You know, um, how do I remain a good Christian? That's what I'm trying to figure out, man. That's a
Yeah,
hard.
it's the classic old temptation, right? The temptation question, how to handle temptation. I
Yeah.
mean, it's all it all depends on whom you imitate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we often tend to think that we're atomized individuals. That's how we're programmed. That's how we're hardwired, to be. That's how we're taught in our. That's how we're programmed in our learning and everything. That's what how we're programmed to think that we're somehow each of us are atomized. Each of us are totally independent in our thinking, in our desires, and so forth. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that we're always borrowing our desires from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why there's such an emphasis in scripture of uh, Jesus saying that I do nothing of my own accord. I do what I see my Father doing, and that's Jesus saying that he imitates the Father. And
Mm-hmm.
then Paul in his epistles write, imitate me just as I imitate Christ. So
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of focus on imitation of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
because and that's how why the incarnation happened, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
because we can't imitate that which we do not see,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why Jesus Christ was incarnated. That's why Jesus Christ came and was born in the flesh, so that he can teach us through imitation, through being a positive role model.
Mm-hmm.
uh, okay, this is how you handle temptation, this is how you handle all of these, this is how you handle accusations, this is how you handle persecution, this is how you handle temptation of power and all of that.
Yeah.
So Jesus is there. That's why the gospels are central. Jesus is there as a role model. That's why we're called Christians. Christians means follower of Christ, right? So
Yeah.
what is a follower of Christ? What does that imply? It means that we're walking in his footsteps. We're literally behind him, imitating every step that he takes. So that's really the focus. And when you think like this, when you think of, you know, think of yourself wanting to imitate Christ, it gets a lot easier, right? And I'm not saying like all of the other things are should be cast aside or anything, but it makes you it's sort of like having a cheat code to a video game that you're playing, right? So it makes everything easier for you. So once you're focused on Jesus, everything falls into place, right? So the problem with imposing something, whether we should impose something on others violently or whether we should give them radical freedom and everything, that problem is solved when you look at Jesus. When you look at, for example, the episode with the stoning of the adulterous woman, right? When the Pharisees and the scribes bring an adulterous woman to his feet and say, what should we do? Because the law says we have to stone her. So
Yeah.
Jesus says, yeah, you can stone her, but he who casts the first stone has to be sinless, right? So he is disarming the authoritarian, the overtly religious authoritarianism that we tend to see a lot in the right wing, right? At the same time, he says to, and this is to your question, Shannon, you asked like, what, like, should I be a doormat? When you see so many people coming to hurt you, or what, tempting you towards evil. Jesus is giving the woman she's Jesus is not saying to the woman, now go and do whatever you want, because that would create chaos, that would create even more violence if he said that. So that's why Jesus is saying to the woman, go and sin no more. So he's still adhering to the rules and regulations, he's still adhering to the taboos and everything, but at the same time he's inviting you towards it, gently inviting you towards it, as opposed to forcefully pushing you towards it and saying, you'll die, I'll kill you if you don't do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's, I think a lot of times, you know, perhaps we take like the gospels and everything, like when you read those passages and everything, as, oh well, um you know well, Jesus, was good to the prostitute, and everything like that. You know what I'm saying? So we should forgive, just like Jesus did or like, it's all about everybody kind of sees it as the main theme is you shouldn't, you got one finger pointed at somebody else, but then there's three fingers pointed back at you, kind of thing.
Don't you point that finger at me.
Oh, why? What an entrance.
Yeah, man. David's on the line, brother. What's going on, man?
Jesus said, turn the other cheek, but you better not point that finger at me.
Man, that's what I'm saying. It's hard to do that, brother. It's hard to turn the other cheek, man. I'm trying to I'm trying to work on that this Lenten season. I'm trying to work on that, man. But that's what you were saying is the whole thing of like, an easy, a gentle correction, because if you it's like with your with a child, you tell, don't do that, you know what I'm saying, or stop that, you know what I'm saying. See, for them, everything is kind of like, okay, well, it's either they're scared or they're gonna be like, well, I'm gonna do it again, you know what I'm saying, because you just, you're hollering at me, so I'm gonna do it again, but when you explain to them, in a gentle way, say, okay, I'm asking you not to do that, and here's why. You see what I mean? Then they kind of let go, and they're like, okay, I understand. You know what I'm saying? He's not hollering at me, and that's the way I think Jesus talks, with the woman and everything. He's talking to the disciples. He's speaking to them the way that you know, when he says, well, I don't do anything other than what the Father has showed me. He's like, well, this is the way the Father talks to me, in a gentle way. You know what I'm saying? In a way that helps me to understand, or whatever. You know, I'm not a theologian, so I'm not getting all this, right. But I think that's the way we have to be. And sometimes that's very hard, to because you want to when you get upset, it's like you're not trying to explain nothing. You just want it to stop. You know what I mean? You just want that person to quit doing what they're doing, or you want to not be bothered. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like, okay, what am I feeling right now? And am I really approaching this the right way? You know? And yeah. So I think that's another lesson to take from what is that called? It's called the stoning of stoning
Adulterous
the
stoning
stoning of
of
the
the
adulteress. Yeah,
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 yeah, the Gospel of John.
yeah, yeah. David, we're talking about what do we say, Surit?
How to
The
stay, how
right
to not
path.
go into the right path and a balanced path, how to not go into the opposite extremes, like left wing, right wing extremes, right?
Yeah, yeah. So what you think, man? How do you stay on the right path?
I think every time we want to have a Bible study, it always comes back to this adulterous woman you want to talk about.
Well, she's an important character, bro. Somehow she makes her way into the conversation all the time. That must mean something important.
What do you think about Ash Wednesday? Aren't you celebrating it today?
Yeah. Yep.
Did you get your ash yet?
Not yet, bro.
What time does it start?
Uh they're doing I think they do three of them throughout the day, but I'm gonna go later today.
You
So
get the last ash.
yeah, I get the particles, the last little flakes, you know.
How is Pope Francis? Is he off the ventilator and everything? Is he recovered?
I don't know, actually. It's something new every time, man. So we'll see. One day
Somebody
he's off of
somebody's got to check who his doctor is. He's probably got similar doctors like Michael Jackson had, those weirdos that are always putting stuff in his food. You know what I'm talking about? You remember them demented Circus du Soleil people that he had coming to the Vatican?
Yeah, I
And
do.
they had little clowns with weird makeup from Italian circus origins.
Yeah.
I think about those demented little fellas putting stuff into his mix when he thinks he's taking a multivitamin. God knows who they represent. And they're over there
Like
putting powders and liquids and chemical concoctions and God knows what else. That man's just trying to live and trying to do what he has to do. And he's got,
Exactly.
it's always like, because if MJ had it and Prince had it, they always had some sketch doctor giving him a 50 cocktails of drugs every day. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so did Elvis have it. So you would think maybe the Pope, you know what I mean? It's always like, oh, I know a guy. He's the finest doctor in all the Vatican. And then you go and find out who he's talking with. Go
Mhm.
find out what he's saying on the NSA server.
Mhm.
Remember,
Mhm.
Tulsi found those people talking weird stuff on the NSA server. Remember that? Did you see that?
No.
They found him having a sex chat talking about getting neo vaginas and all kinds of nasty stuff on the NSA chat room. The CIA and NSA agents were all on there blabbering away about getting this kind of synthetic thing and that synthetic thing. So you
Yeah.
only know, who is a cutout for a cutout for a cutout. When you've got the kind of money and power and influence that the Vatican sways, for every matter,
Mhm.
there's a lot of foreign interests and American interests that would love to have influence in multiple directions. So when I saw
Mhm.
Pope Francis, one of the recent photos, he looked very bloated, and it
Mhm.
reminded me of Elvis Presley's face right before he passed. They get backed up with all kinds of toxins. According to
Yeah.
Dr. Ray Pete, you're not living if you're not having at least 3 well-formed bowel movements a day in the name of God. you are not living the way God intended you to live. So
Yeah.
that's something we all fall short of the glory of God. Many of us are backed up for days, and the food that we're eating, the drugs and the poisons that we're exposed to, you're only getting one bowel movement a day. That's not good enough. According to the optimal flow of your cellular life that God gave you to have abundant life, you should be having at least 2 to 3 well-formed bowel movements a day if you're going to be advancing the kingdom of God at optimum speed in your mind and your heart and your soul. So
Yeah.
I don't think, in other words, I don't think that's what's happening with Pope Francis.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
probably not been happening for a long time, which begs us to really start to think about the way we compartmentalize science and faith. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I
Stop
do.
compartmentalizing it.
Hmm. Yeah. How do we stop compartmentalizing it? Like, how do we, how do we be healthy in body and mind?
Well,
You have
it reminds
bowel
me,
movements in the name of God, like David said just now.
now don't, I just stepped into my office, so my hair is not exactly
Oh, there he is. I
showtime.
was wondering when we'd get to see the face.
Yeah.
This is not me. This is an AI rendering of me. That's why it's fuzzy and not exactly what I look like. Think about it.
Well, it's okay. It's already on record now. So it's
I'm typing it away and it's speaking as I type.
yeah. Yeah.
So, anyways, you know, I remember a young Shannon Braswell said one of the greatest lines in modern religious commentary.
Here he's
He
about to
said
come
every
back
church
down.
should have a chemistry lab in their basement.
Yeah.
One of the
I
greatest
think
lines.
thank you. Thank you. I think that should happen. I think we need to, if you're gonna be
And he's not talking about Breaking Bad. He's talking about real deep science and real innovation. And he likes chemistry. I don't know why you like chemistry, but I
know,
like physics
chemistry always got the short end of the stick when it came to science, It's
because
kind of
nobody wants to burn their hands with some caustic chemical. You know?
no, I think it's because like, we lived in this time where like when we were, in high school and everything, it was all about physics and, Ichiro Kaku or whatever his name is, uh, and his whole thing of
Michio Kaku,
string
that
theory.
has been, we had him on our show, and
Yeah.
Dr. You wiped the floor with that guy.
Yeah.
We haven't
You
seen him
know,
since.
and so that's the thing. It's like, it was all about string theory and coils and all this type of stuff,
But that's
or it
how
was
it
about
always is.
biology.
The
It was about
revolution
biology.
will never be televised, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because revolution in physics and revolution in science and chemistry, revolution in anthropology, anything that really disrupts and makes everybody else who was grifting off of those titles look dumb or lazy is
Hmm.
never going to have an easy way of getting televised, right? Because, you know, the problem we have, right, is we have this real backlog in terms of the world of physics. And we have to give credit where credit is due. Peter Thiel was one of the best mainstream figures for harping on this idea in a rather approachable way by indicating that we have a stagnation in the world of what he calls atoms. What a great line. And we have a lot of innovation in the world of bits.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, a lot of the folks who love to use that line because they're inspired by Peter Thiel still haven't exited the cul-de-sac of the world of bits, right? And it's a tough. In other words, there's a card. There's always whenever you have anything great that summarizes a mainstream kind of summation of what's going on in the culture, you always have an electricity to that statement, and people want to get on board that statement without doing the hard work, right? And here's the thing, right? As someone who has been promoting a new unification of both the social sciences and the hard sciences with Dr. Yu's physics theory, and I've been promoting this on live talk radio, for many years. I know very well the cost of trying to be a first mover for truth outside of the cul-de-sac of Gnostic bits, right? Most people are cardboard critics of the bits world. You
Yeah.
know, you say, well, what do you got to show for? Well, we got to refine Elon's rockets. And I say, excuse me, that was invented in China thousands of years ago, rockets.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you telling me you're getting out of the cul-de-sac of Gnostic bits and information to the detriment of physical advancement? Why are you telling me that when you're trying to do a derivation on something that was invented by the Chinese thousands of years ago?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Rockets and fireworks and explosions and things that go up and then that way, right? Let's think deeper than that. But when you think deeper than that, the current system as it is designed is still very Gnostic and bits oriented, and it will try to squeeze you out of existence, not
Mm-hmm.
just in a conspiratorial sense. There's always some of that. People conspire to beat things that are rivals.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a mimetic phenomenon. We know that. If enough people don't validate it, the people don't want to entertain the idea, and the algorithm reinforces that and makes sure that that is like a gatekeeper to keep people caught in prison. And that's
Yeah.
something that I deal with all the time. The biggest fundamental flaw that human beings have is they have a lack of wisdom in discerning that which is true prior to its mimetic validation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I watch a theory, I have to say the same thing. If I did not know Dr. Yu and I did not know all the research that we've done behind the scenes, and I saw a video of his that we've done or something, and it doesn't have millions of views, and it says it's a unified theory of physics, it's a very hard thing. Even if I watch it and I say, wow, this is so intuitively true, it resonates in my being.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's this other part of your brain, the left hemisphere, that's going to kick in constantly and say, and like crosstalk, right? And say, but why, if this thing was really the unified theory of everything, why doesn't it have 52 million views?
Right.
So that's the mimetic, that's the weak spot of human beings being able to actually exit out of the cul-de-sac of Gnostic bits and
Mm-hmm.
enter into the golden age of the physical world where the body is redeemed, our bowel movements are 2 to 3 a day, and that's just the foundation of a good day in the golden age that Christ has us to participate in and go forward than that, right? At some point, we won't have to have bowel movement in the new fulfillment of all things in all, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there will be no waste. It'll be so efficient and so beautiful, you won't even have to have waste. But the point is, if you're not moving, if you're not in active motion in your mind and body, you will lose it. If you're not thinking with your mind, you lose it. If you're not thinking with your passion, you lose it. If you're not thinking with your body, you lose it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you're not making bowel movements, you're rancid and you're creating all kinds of waste products in the intestinal tract that will cause all kinds of attaches of negative stress effects on your body that will slow your thinking, slow your ability to have peace and joy, to forgive endlessly. All the things that God gave us to have an abundant life are right in front of us, but yet we're so mimetically retarded, right? We are so held back by making sure that the crowd has validated what we want to receive as truth. And that's what Christ came to help us get free from. And that's what my show's tried to do, of course, in my own little, imperfect way. And
Yeah.
Surit's tried to do it with his work, and you're trying to do it with your work, Shannon. So how come it's not working?
That's what I want to know. And that's the thing I'm trying to get to. So how do you not be going through this fasting and everything, it's like, you become more hyper aware of these things or whatever, or I don't know, maybe you're supposed to be hyper aware of those things, but being hyper aware of that, it's like you get frustrated. Okay. Like you say, okay, well, ain't nobody watching this. And I think that this is true or whatever. Nobody's looking at it. So, I'm frustrated with that. Or, people telling me, well, you ain't really doing nothing and blah blah blah. So you get frustrated with that. So how do you deal with all of that? You know what I'm saying? Without letting that negative mimesis overtake you. You know what I mean?
Because you have to understand, well, that's where Rene Girard really is a patron saint for folks like us, because he helps you think outside of the noise of the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And he helps you remember that Jesus wasn't just coming here to just be this kind of left brain completion of the sacrificial system of the Old Testament, but really taking it to a whole nother dimension that would just unleash this fount of creativity. And it starts with the recognition in my opinion, that what we see on the cross is the completion. And I'm not the first to say this; others have said it. But I do think it's true. What we see on the cross with Christ is the completion of our harmonization. It's the ability for us to start thinking critically and truly self-aware outside of the crowd. However, it's not an autopilot scenario. It's up to us how we deal with it. If you choose to eat seed oils, you will have a harder time practicing the fruit of the Spirit. If you choose to listen to only theological approaches to the biblical text, you will have a hard time receiving what I just said. Do you see how it works? That's your choice. That's your choice. That's your choice. Every day, it's my choice, because
One
I
of
feel
the
the temptation. Oh, wow, maybe I should have mainstreamed this stuff. Maybe I should have pretended to be a little grifter like Ben Shapiro first and then reveal all the things that I'm really thinking about, the deep stuff I've tried to provide around the years of us doing these shows. But then I look back at that and I say, why would I want to do that? You only get so many turns around the sun in this level of our incarnation. Why would you want to squander such a precious opportunity to tell the truth if that's what God has convicted you to do and you have the means to do it?
Yeah.
one of the
Sir,
key characteristics of a maddened mob or a persecuting mob is stupor, right? Intoxication, and what David said is it bears a lot when you know about mimetic theory, is because if you have these seed oils and all of that, and if you have these types of foods that really sedate you, or make you numb to awareness, or make you intoxicated, then it's really priming you for persecution. It's priming you for for the accusatory spirit of Satan,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because that's what Satan is. Satan is the accusatory spirit, right? That's what the word. That's where the word Satan comes from.
yeah.
So when you
But
are
let's give a more easier scenario because, like, okay, we talk about the seed oils and everything, but everybody doesn't really associate that with intoxication, so they're not on that level yet. So let's talk more like alcohol. You get intoxicated with alcohol and you say, okay, that primes you for persecution. So are you saying that, like, when you get intoxicated, from drugs or alcohol, that it makes you more
prone to mimesis. It makes you more, it gets your guard down. Like if you read into these ancient myths, and I'm bringing this more into the I will be bringing this more into the modern context as we progress. But if you read the ancient myths, the Dionysian feast and all of that, you can read into you can read into those stories and see how intoxication plays a big part of when it comes to scapegoating, right?
Fantastic
But
point.
yeah, I mean, if you
Remember,
are
remember, they weren't just drinking wine in the Dionysian cult. They were
yeah,
also doing ergot or whatever, which is the original form of LSD, right? So they were doing hard drugs, as we would call it, and they were doing wine, and they were mixing it together.
yeah,
And that's a picture into what we're all in. We're all in a Dionysiac cult, so to speak, in our participation in the modern world as it's presented. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
yeah, we tend to think that wine and like the Muslims do, right? Like stay away from alcohol and you will be okay. But we fail to realize that the modern day priesthood of our time has created new versions of these things, like seed oils, like
Great point.
processed
Yeah.
foods, like artificial
And it's a great point
sweet.
because, sir, that it illustrates that the older forms of initiation into sacrifice are oftentimes more easily seen by those entrapped by the newer forms, right?
yeah,
So it's
Yeah,
yeah,
easy to see the alcohol, and
yeah,
it's harder to see the vaccines,
yeah,
deficient soil, which
yeah,
is huge before you even get to the seed oil thing. You're eating nutritionally deficient pepper. Even if you invest in expensive food,
yeah,
even if it's organic, even, You know, in the modern world, you're eating nutritionally deficient food, even if you're buying cucumbers and peppers and vegetables and all that. And then you barely get it into the kid's mouth if you're lucky in the modern context, and it's so devoid of nutrition that many times children are developing social abnormal behavior and bizarre behavior and things like that because their organism of the body is screaming for certain nutritions that it's deficient in. And so, you know, there's think about it. Surit knows, and we've talked about this too, that food is everything. You are what you eat. The beginning of the Bible starts with the garden with fruit, and there's always food, and sacrifice is always around food, and food and religion go hand in hand. You know, and you know, you bless the food at the prayer time. It's always when it's time to eat and stuff, and it's always those things are always involved. So would it not be surprising? Would it? You
Yeah.
know, that
Yeah.
that food is one of the lowest hanging fruits for them to poison and to warp your mind, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And another one is media. You know,
Yeah.
you know, the constant everything, dude. It's like everywhere. You know, Twitter, YouTube, Google, Facebook, you know, the newsreel. You turn on the TV.
But here's one of the things. One of the things that makes it frustrating is again stress mechanism, right? The
Mhm,
body stress mechanism makes, you know, like you were saying earlier, when you're
mhm,
fasting, you're more tuned in.
mhm,
Well, that's not always a good thing, right? Because sometimes you're tuned in to every slight and every offense
yep,
around you,
yep,
right?
yep.
And that's what makes fasting sometimes an irritable state for people because
Mhm,
it's like you're getting sedated with the euphoria because that's the stress hormones doing their job.
mhm,
But the longer you're in there and all the different cycles involved, like the things you're doing alongside the fasting,
mhm,
your sleep, your environment, you know,
mhm,
your exposure to sunlight, your exposure to red light, your exposure to other variables will
mhm,
contribute to a very, like you said, hypersensitive state in which every slight feel a mountain is made out of every molehill, they say, the
mhm,
boomers, remember that saying?
mhm,
So it's like, you know, everything becomes much more agitating, including all of that inundation, right? So my focus has always been, you know, the way I deal with it, and it's not perfect, but the way I try to deal with it is like, God has given me, you know, insights into where I need to go. And I'm playing that tortoise, not the hare, you know, like it's
mhm,
tortoise wins the race, slow and steady,
mhm.
you know, and that means something to different people. Like Shannon, you know, you and I've talked about, you know, sometimes I go into these wild topics and you might say, go a little slower, right? Like talk about alcohol, not the seed oil as a poison, right? And I try to think strategically about not being slow on some things, you know, like strategic bursts of explosive claims, right?
Mhm, mhm,
And then pull back and
mhm,
then blow them out again and then pull them back and then
mhm,
strategically load those into the record
mhm.
to kind of provide a foundation for things to come, right? And so it looks like chaos sometimes what I'm doing, and probably most of the time that's what it is. But I like to think there's a little bit of strategy in what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think for me it's just like, you know, I had to make it, I want to make it make sense to,
Right.
like you know, to your average, 30 something year old male who's kind of like,
Well,
man,
what do you mean makes sense? Steak and Shake's already doing beef tallow.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so I thought it would take longer for a big chain like that to do it. I thought I was going to have to do a harassment campaign on some of these chains, but I was thankful that somebody, you know, somebody took the initiative and saw the market opportunity to go ahead and be a first mover. And that now that the cat's out of the bag, you're going to only see that continue. And so the only thing that's holding it back is the capacity for our supply chain to provide enough tallow to replace all the toxic crap for fried stuff. Of course,
Yeah.
there's problems, by the way, with frying foods in general at a certain temperature. It releases things that are not healthy.
Mhm,
But that's another topic. You got to deal with these wins as they come. And that win came a lot faster than even I anticipated because
mhm,
on 2018, man, I was on talk radio again talking about seed oils in a political context when nobody else did.
mhm,
People talked about seed oils in podcasts to the choir of people who are nerds about nutrition, but I was talking to firemen and police officers and teachers and everybody who tunes into FM and AM radio on major market stations. And I was telling everybody about this, and nobody understood what a seed oil was. And now, 2025, it's everywhere, and tallow is now being trending against McDonald's every day. It's crazy. Look how fast things change. That's so heartening. If we didn't have this media environment, I would have had to do that for 20 or 30 years. If I started my show during the age of Rush Limbaugh, it would have taken me 30 years to get that kind of buy-in. I would have started
that would have been your life's mission, bro. Like,
yeah, that's all I would have been able to do. And now I get to use it as just one, one thing, and I can move on to other things too. So do you see how much power the media revolution is providing us and the gospel, that you can adapt the gospel revelation to all sorts of things. It's like there's so much on the playing field that we can do now. Why are we complaining? I mean, it's amazing. Everything's in flux.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
sir, you got any last?
Well, I mean that like the media thing that you mentioned, Shannon, is like, yeah, there is like media does serve uh, media is a huge part of how we become the maddened mob, but you have to keep in mind that not just media is just that. Media is a medium. It's like the bridge on which everything travels on, right? Like food is a medium, even, like if you think about it like that. But at the same time, the gospel also travels through media. So the gospel also, like you can see people like through media. What really makes us crazy is instant gratification, right? No holding back. So it's like always trying to give us this dopamine hits, or always keeping us in a state of anxiety, in a state of uh, death, like in fear of death, right? And so it's also like the intoxication or the poison or whatever you want to call it. It goes hand in hand with that. So, but at the same time, Christ has also captured media. And this is why we have seen exponential growth after his death and resurrection. It's like meteoric how media has grown after he's died. Like before that, we had, like, depends on which theory you hold, like billions of years or even like millions of years or whatever. We had so much time, but we haven't seen such rapid growth in technology. But after Christ died, we have seen, like, because what Gerard said, right? Like science has science. We did not invent science, like that word. How do you put it? We did not.
We found science because we stopped burning witches or something like that.
Yeah, because we were forced to abandon witch hunts and lynch mobs and all of that. That's why we are forced to strive for real solutions, and that's what David's been talking about all the time.
Yeah,
Real solutions like
and
seed
that's what
oils.
and that's what we. It's not just that, sir, and what Surit's saying is so true, but we often say it in a Gerardian sense, like Gerard did, because he wasn't in the news media like us. So for Gerard, he didn't think about it like we're doing it and how we're doing it, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that we always say it in the past tense. We didn't stop. We didn't stop burning witches. He said, because we discovered the scientific method. We discovered the scientific method after we stopped burning witches. But that's not in the past tense, because everything that you and we are all reacting to and discussed is the vestige of witch burning. Okay, so watch this. So we are living in this. This is meta now. Here we go, meta. We are living in that historical process unfolding, not as a past tense. We stopped it and now we're not doing it. That was the old way. The new way is still, there's different vestiges of that sacrificial witch hunting going on. So like a war, like we have to be in Gaza and do this and burn this, blow this building up. And every time we see it, even the hardened Zionist Christians have to say, they have to do something to their brain to justify blowing up a whole neighborhood of kids into the rubble. They have to do something. So they grasp at straws. Oh, it's an Amalekite. Oh, it's a Canaanite. Oh, it's a Hittite. Oh, it's a, they start learning their Sunday school real fast. Oh, it's a Phoenician. Oh, it's an Amalekite. I mean, good Lord, you'll learn all the Old Testament real fast if it means justifying the murder of a person in your own freaking eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You'll learn your Old Testament real fast when
Yeah.
your conscience is at the line, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's not the point of that text. And those who are following Christ know that in their heart.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
so wait, so you're saying that we're still, in other words, we're still burning witches?
No, but it's
Yeah.
not the same. It's a different form.
Yeah, I know.
And how
But
we
it's the
revolt,
same content.
and we have an obligation to revolt ethically against it.
Yeah.
So when you say, I'm watching this stuff and I'm disgusted by it, that's God saying, hey, remember how somebody a long time ago was disgusted by a literal witch burning? You're feeling something kind of on the same parity, not quite as visceral, thank God, because Christ is beating the sacrificial system. So the first step you do is you say, thank God we've gotten to that point where I'm not looking out the window and watching people mob violence. Unfortunately, some people, according to the J-Aunt, have to see that every day. Right. But I'm not just picking on J-Aunt, but everybody, that there's witch burnings literally happening in many places around the world. We know about it when we think about our friend Monica Paulus, who came from Papua New Guinea, which was less infected by the gospel than India. Isn't it interesting that literal witch burning is much more mainstream, even though it's still fringe? But isn't it interesting that it's much more mainstream in Papua New Guinea society relative to India, when India has had a longer encounter with the gospel infection than Papua New Guinea? You can see it like clockwork, and it doesn't operate literally like clockwork, but you can kind of see the infection rate of the gospel affecting societies at different paces in history, depending on how much they've had an access to it. So what I'm suggesting is that the revulsion that we feel about the corruption, the Epstein Islands, the Gaza wars, the Ukraine wars, the lies, the Doge corruption exposure, all of those things are meant to be opportunities for God to shake us up and to make us fight in the name of Christ by being like Christ and doing things that dissolve the opportunity for those vestiges of witch hunting to continue.
Yeah, I mean, remember what Christ said to Pilate, that you have no authority over me except that which has been given unto you. And we Christians are supposed to imitate Christ, in that Christ is not saying that, yeah, God has given you the authority to, Christ is not saying to Pilate that God has given you the authority to do whatever persecutions that you want. That's not God's intention. What Christ is doing there is deconstructing power, deconstructing authoritarianism, and showing us who the real master is, not these demigods in worldly governments. And we should do the same in our, that's why we are Christians. We should imitate Christ. We should reenact what Christ did. Think of us living in a cyberpunk version of Christ's story. Does that make sense? So like the Pharisees and all of that, they still exist in our time, but they have a slightly different variation and so on. But the mission for us is the same, is to deconstruct all of these things and also point everyone to Christ and to what Christ did, which is signs and wonders, right?
And that's why
He,
why you think that passion story is there, where Jesus is rejected in favor of Barabbas by the crowd. That's to tell you that, Shannon, if you do the Lord's work, you're probably not going to be granted a lot of opportunities to have the crowd have interest in you, because there was a tale of the original Gospels. We've said this many times on this show. The original gospel text has Barabbas's name as Jesus Barabbas, Jesus Bar of Abba the Father, Jesus Son of the Father. So you have a tale of two Jesuses. And Pontius Pilate is saying, who do you want to save and who do you want to kill? And the crowd says, kill the nice Jesus or whatever, right? And save the one who is a violent revenge guy, a William Wallace figure, right? And so you got to understand that, to the extent that shows are algorithmically supported by the mob is to the extent that they tend to look more like what the crowd wants, which is either bread and circuses or sacrifice, right? So there are shows that are very popular and channels and influencers that are very popular who are bread and circuses and mindless entertainment, teaching stupid, idiotic values by example. And then there are shows that are and influencers that are kind of promoting sacrifice. And some do both. Most do both, right? But to the extent that you rebel against that mimetic mob pressure to do that, and you tell the truth with love and wisdom and discernment, then you are participating in the life of Christ and also the life of God, because God is in Christ, right? So you're participating in theosis, not just as an individual, but as a species, right? And that's people just totally miss that part. But you know, there's a species level process that we're going through, and when you see it, you can't unsee it. And I tell you, why do you think I'm so excited? You know, it's like everybody, we're all excited. But the problem is, how do you get from there to there, right? And you think, why aren't more people able to see this? But you know, that's
Well,
how
there's
it was for
okay,
Jesus.
but there's something. So this is and I don't know if putting these two together will make sense or not, whatever. But I'm gonna try it anyways. So David, you talk about the whole thing of like Jesus is, that, like Surit talks about the gospel, the good news, right? The good news, is slowly, you know, going throughout the world. You know what I mean? But it seems like in the very places in which it took root or foundation, it's receding. So I mean, like here in America, no, wait, give me a second. You say no, but the thing about it is that we've talked about this problem many times, and this is the whole thing of the broken family. You know what I'm saying? And the whole thing of like, fathers and everything. And, men don't want to be in church because they don't feel like the church speaks to them. It doesn't tell them anything, I'll give you an example. I went to church one night, and the dude was a member of the Knights of Columbus, and he told all the men to stand up, and he said, men, I want you to, you know, uh, whatever. And then he told the women to stand up. He said, women, men, I want you to look at the women. They are the backbone of the house. You can't do nothing without women. And you better do everything to make her happy, because your life will, whatever. And so do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, on the one hand, yeah, the gospel is being spread, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, we're having this sort of reaction towards what's going on in places like Gaza or whatever. But it's like internally, what he said, it's like, okay, that's, it's a little, it's like, that's irritating. That's a little agitating for you to say that, because it's like, this is why men don't want to come to church. This is why we don't want to deal with this shit. We're 30 something years old, and I got to listen to this old boomer telling me how I should think about, what I'm saying? It's like, my thing is, you don't even know what these women do. What we got to go through with them. You know what I'm saying? And vice versa. I'm not saying that men are any, like any better or whatever. I'm just saying, it's like, I don't come to church for you to tell me that. I want you to understand what I'm going through as a man. I want you to hear I got problems. So what are you going to tell me that's going to make me feel like the good news is for me too? Not, yes, I'm concerned about the children in Gaza. But I'm also concerned about the fact that men are running around here drinking themselves half to death and making all kind of bad decisions because they don't have no guidance. They don't have anybody to imitate in a positive way. And when you do find somebody that's a good imitate, you know, an older man that's you should want to imitate, they say shit like that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that's part of being a man and a leader is not reacting emotionally to things that are wrong.
Okay, but I don't have to
You
act.
know, and I do the
But
same thing. I get
it's
emotional
like
sometimes.
it's I didn't, you know, I didn't say nothing to him or
Yeah,
anything. You know, I'm not, you know, but I'm just thinking in my head like, you know, if most of the guys in here were in their 30s, that's probably not something they would want to hear to make them come to church.
but you gotta understand that. Remember when Jesus said that the mother will be against the daughter and the father against the brother, and everything's going to be breaking up, right? Like, what that means is that the era that he came up in, it was rocked by a lot of turmoil, but it wasn't to the same saturation of turmoil that we have grown up in, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the old strong structures of culture making had not been thoroughly dissolved as rapidly as had not been as thoroughly challenged and shaken in their foundations when he was coming of age with young women than when we did, right? So when he was coming, yeah, there was the sexual revolution, but it was a lot of that stuff was relatively new in its infection of the body politic or whatever you want to call America, right? So he's only going from, you know, the framework that he has, which is not false. It's just not complete, right? And that's that's the dance of truth is the Trinity, and Trinity invites us. The Trinitarian life invites people to have the kind of wisdom and masculinity to for him to sit down and hear your perspective, and for you to sit down and hear his perspective, and there's a harmony of truth that can be found in both perspectives, right? Because he's talking about it on a survival level, right? Like if you want to get, you know, so it's just like a doctor, right? You know, a doctor says, you got a wound here and I can put a band-aid on it and stop the bleeding, and you're like, okay. And then, you know, you're talking about something deeper. You're saying, but man, there's some kind of disease making me bleed excessively.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, no, 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 no. Don't just shut up about it. Put that band-aid on it. And that's what you do to stop the bleeding. So he's reacting to a different part and you're reacting to a different part. And a
Yeah.
lot of that can be reconciled by having the right mind, right? So when you get your thyroid fix, a lot because I'm talking about something that, look, here we go again. Seed oils 2018, 2025. I'm telling you what the future is right now, folks. What I'm going to do is put this idea into the universe. Biological, bioenergetic, nutrition driven counseling and psychology for couples is going to be the future. Go ahead and watch this blurry video of me because I don't know how to get the camera to stop auto focusing away from me. Go ahead and watch this in 4 or 5 years and watch how this manifests. And again, you know, we are the ambassadors to the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to put myself up as some kind of smoke and mirrors, but the Lord will love to dance with you if you dance with him. He loves
Yeah.
to dance. So what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is, man, think about it. Think about it. There's just deeper issues at play. So I just want to say there are some you have to learn to dance with it. You have to learn to chew the fish and spit out the bones and say, man, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about on one level, but on another level, he has wisdom there because, you
I
know,
mean,
learning how
yeah.
to get along with people and be
Yeah.
kind, you know, is
Mm-hmm.
really a good first step for a lot
Mm-hmm.
of resolving problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, people who are attracted to the manosphere, a lot of them are nice guys
Mm-hmm.
who do things nicely and they get absolutely eviscerated by the dating market. That
Mm-hmm.
is a dating market condition that he did not experience when he was a young man. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the same degree,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it just wasn't. In other words, hypergamy was not as thoroughly normalized when he was a young man as it is now. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's just it's a different battle. It's a different battle environment. It's a different social environment that we are shaping our learned experiences that's different from his. And you have to just learn how to harmonize it back to the gospel, right? And
Yeah.
you know, other words, Shannon, we talked about this a long time ago privately, is
Yeah.
that Christianity will win over Islam because Christianity doesn't need sacrificially enforced laws to figure out how to do the balance between men and women.
Right.
That the Islam is a paper tiger monad that does not account for like free agency and free choice, freely choosing to look at proper differentiation between the genders. It can only enforce it by brute force, top down imposition, which means when it encounters the gospel imitating modern infection of feminism and egalitarianism, it has not the internal capabilities of overcoming it as Christianity does. So in the long run, again, tortoise and hare, okay? Islam is the hare by a lot in the world stage, and so is modernism and liberalism and all these other things. These are the hare, and the gospel is the tortoise. It's going to win, and it doesn't always look slow, but sometimes it's fast, but it's generally a bigger view that we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Amen.
so it's so interconnected, Shannon, because we were talking about intoxications and poisons, and the dating market is, like David brilliantly brought up, is that dating market is the way that it is right now, is because of our misunderstanding of false notions of things like testosterone or estrogen on all of these things, right? So the way the dating market, it is what it is right now is because of the excess of estrogen and the absence of progesterone. And where does that come from? Where does all of that right balance of testosterone and all of that come from? It comes from the seed oil consumption. It comes from what we eat, and that it is only, it's not purely philosophical like a lot of people in the manosphere would like you to think.
Yeah.
It's not coming from pure ideas, it's coming from what you eat, and that's what they don't talk about, but we do talk about it right here. They don't
Because we're
they, the
incarnational and they're dualistic or gnostic.
Yeah,
Yeah, everything's in your mind. It's all in your head and all that type of shit. And yeah,
you
yeah,
talked
That's
about
why it's not about
alcoholism.
that's why it's not about the right political campaign or ideology to win the country. You have to incarnate the change. You have to change your diet, change your environment, get the CO2 right, get your sleep right, get your red light right, and don't overwhelm yourself. Just do one thing at a time.
yeah,
Add one thing at a time, slowly, and don't look for immediate results, but
mhm,
just slowly look and check your mind and get good sleep and pray and do all those spiritual tools, but realize that God loves his creation so much. It's staggering. And we talk about the mind control. The mind control, a lot of it unfortunately comes through the church and religion.
mhm,
Okay. Whoa. Because people are shocked that I'd say that when Jesus's major opponent was usually religious folks.
mhm.
And so people, oh my goodness, you really say that? Yes, because it's true. Because a lot of the mindset you have, let me give you an example. How much generational trauma comes from, in the name of Christianity, over disciplining? Glory to God. You read church fathers, and they were whooping people with rods and stuff. And you say, well, that guy's holy.
Mhm,
Therefore, I do something much milder than that, and I demand results, right?
yeah,
So you don't do spanking. You take spanking off the term, but you do manipulative stuff like putting them in isolation in a room, like
mhm,
freaking Guantanamo Bay for
mhm,
toddlers,
mhm,
or whatever people do in the modern context. Say, well, I'm more mature than just spanking or all that. I do this or that, but it's still authoritarian, and you're creating serotonin authoritarian raised kids who will follow authoritarian approaches,
mhm,
including finding authoritarian psychopaths called alpha males if
mhm,
they're a woman, or finding authoritarian psychopaths called uh you know wife material for a young man. All these people have lack of discernment, primarily because their mind and their body have been metabolically impaired, and then they've been completely impaired environmentally by crappy parenting, by
mhm.
psyop Christianity influences. What I mean is, there's just bad notions that come along. Like if Christianity is a shark and you see the little Gomorrahs and those things that attach, or if it's a whale and the barnacles attach, there's all these little Gomorrahs and barnacles and stuff that are attached to the Christian project through history, that people pick up
Yeah,
as these bad ideologies that end up becoming passed down as dysfunction through the generations. And for example, One of the things that you know, I've talked about is, you know, watching out how much exposure people have to screen times if they have kids, right? But at the same time, one of the reasons why, if we think about it from an incarnational standpoint, that a child would turn on screens to a certain extent is because it's their biological organism's impulse. It's their, and when I say organism, I'm just implying the biological aspect of their spirit and soul that's all interconnected, needing the dopamine to balance out the serotonin lifestyle they're living. They're living without sunlight. They're living without healthy social models. They're hit, and the parents are not modeling proper behavior. They're yelling or barking or yelling at their worker or yelling at their employer or whatever they're doing. They're on their phone all the time. The child will imitate it mimetically. They're rough and authoritarian, so the child will become resentful or authoritarian in ways they can find to do. So all of this stuff is in our choice to be aware of it, take every thought and action captive, and be participants in God's divine wisdom that we all have access to if we just stop and think about it. Stop letting the religious psyops do your thinking for you. Think like Jesus did. He didn't let the Pharisees psyop him into doing stupid, dumb, evil things. And he did that. He recorded that in his history so you would have the wisdom to see how that might be in your life. Do you see what I mean? What Surit said is true. I don't know about the cyberpunk game, particularly how it works, but I got the general gist of it because it's a video game, right? And so when you play the Jesus game of reality of your life, which is the life that we're called to do, you know, you get to play the Jesus character, which means as you're going in your life, you're going to have moments where you're going to be confronted with false religious pieties like Jesus did. And you either going to be a victim of it and go along with it because it's got the right vernacular around it, or you're going to think critically like Jesus and pursue that which is true, which means just because a saint took a rod to get their child to have authoritarian discipline of, 1,800 years ago, doesn't mean that you have to use that same serotonin style, cortisol driven, adrenaline bullcrap in 2025 America, right? Because the kind of context that man grew up in as a saint, where people were tearing each other's tigers were tearing the intestines for Saturday night matinee or Saturday morning matinee entertainment, is not the context that you live in. Thanks be to God.
Yeah.
Right? You see what I mean? Things move forward. And that's why this reactive religious impulse is one of the greatest opponents of the gospel. And I'll continue to say it because it's true. And the truth will set people free from it. You know, I'm not going to take my win and say, well, I'll just align myself with this reactionary impulse. No, it's not real. It's not going to get you the results you want. It's going to make you an angry person with resentment. It's not going to free you because it's going to make you be so dualistic and Gnostic, you won't even think about serotonin playing a role in the fruit of the spirit. You won't even think about thyroid function because your doctor didn't tell you, or some guru that you do your fitness bro stuff on YouTube didn't say it. So therefore, that's all you need to take care of about nutrition is the surface level that he provides. No, go further. That's the whole point. You have this wonderful internet context by which you can dive in and retrieve knowledge. And that retrieval process, Marshall McLuhan said, it is invaluable for the digital age. I can retrieve knowledge when somebody shares with me a study showing Meduna in the 1950s. This clinician was curing people's atheism using CO2 gas. In one session, he could cure people of atheism. What does that mean? What are the implications of that? That a gas could help you not believe in a folly like there is no God and I hate him? Yeah, because that's probably rooted in some kind of process of hormonal dysfunction and stress, and as well as environmental and social conditioning. But you will literally watch. See, here's the thing, man. I'm going to say this. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. We're going now. You ready for this? Because Surit likes this one too. I think we talked about it on the phone. Or maybe it was you or somebody that sounded like you.
Okay.
Watch this. Maybe so. If you didn't, you want to know about principality. No, it was not Surit. Somebody else. But maybe I talked to Surit too about this in another time. Principalities look like this. Watch this. Okay. Because they'll tell you, like, this is what your estrogen range needs to be considered clinically normal for a male, or they don't even usually check it for men, but they can if you need it, but that's hard to do. But like for women and so forth, right? But that normal of the clinic is based on decades of poisoned people, right? So so what I'm trying to say is, so you have these behavior patterns that are a symptom of excess estrogen as a man or a woman. And society normalizes that poison state for men and women as normal, literally in the lab. And then they go out and they make TV programs and influencers that reinforce behavior as normal, which is not normal, based on that poison state. That's what it means when we say we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in high places. It's not just government, like libertarian critique is. It's also this cosmic mimetic amalgamation of corporations and influencers and mimetic role models, all of that coming together to hoodwink you till you don't know that there's a problem right under your nose that you could solve with practical steps. The kingdom of God is so simple. It's like a child. And a child does not have the behavior patterns that our society is trying to gaslight us into believing are normal behavior patterns, like being hypersensitive, like we're told today, for example, women are supposed to be like hypersensitive about recalling every slight ever done to them. But as Dr. Ray Peat, who wrote about nutrition for women, said, in many different ways, that is a sign of oftentimes of excess estrogen that makes you cling, or impaired thyroid that makes you, and all of these kind of go hand in hand together as like self-reinforcing mechanisms, makes you clean and remember and retrieve painful slights harder than it would be if everything was functioning well with your metabolism. When you get progesterone in balance in its proper ratio to estrogen, when you get other things that are in proper alignment hormonally in your body, women are not designed to have to hold on to these grudges. It's a sign of a poisoned state of mind. So what does it mean when a woman or a young girl grows up their whole life surrounded by a principality, a whole society that tells them by example, just by the characters, that poison states of mind for men and women are what you should aspire to pursue as good, as freedom, as achievement, as empowerment, when in fact it's the devil trying to get them to embrace a poison state of existence, a toxic state of existence. And they even use the word toxic. That's how you know usually what the play is, right? Always look at what the devil hates the most. So he'll say, the normal vernacular is you're a toxic person if you're defying the establishment culture's approach to doing things. But it's always a tell because they project onto, what they're doing. What the society is enabling a toxic state of existence. And they're telling you, you go, girl, if you're infertile. You go, girl, if you don't want to have kids. You go, girl, if you take. They're prescribing people birth control pills when they're young for things not related to birth control, for hormonal issues or other problems that they're prescribing it for other purposes. Doctors are throwing it out like candy. And you're doing these things, and meanwhile, you're creating a poison state of mind as the standard to aspire to. Is that not what Satan would do if he wanted to control the media? Would he not show examples and doctor reports and standards of care, all of these things surrounding you in this cocoon of the Truman Show? And you are told that, trying to be fiscally conservative, that's financial abuse, they call it now, right? And now there's always real versions of all of these things, right? That's how the devil works. There's always a kernel of truth that there is ways to do things in a way that's tyrannical, right? But you take that as the foundation, and then you trap all this manipulation and gaslighting, so that trying to save money or not use credit cards or all these abnormal behavior, weird, fringe. No, that's normal. It's normal to live life not in debt the rest of your life. Duh. You know, the Bible talks more about staying away from debt than it does away from sin and stuff. So, you know, these are normal things that we get gaslit to believe are fringe and weird.
Yeah.
You know, don't have a credit. I don't have a credit score. Why do you need a credit score? Who do I need to measure my score for? You know, and why? Well, you got to have one. Why? Maybe you've been told by the herdsmen that run your cattle pen that you need to move in that direction, and you don't need to move that direction. You know.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That's Bible study for Wednesday, man.
Does that make sense what I said? Because I know I said
Yeah.
a lot there, but I want people to think about that really.
Yeah.
Like you're gaslit around every corner. The blood work is telling you you're fine when you could be impaired. So you don't even begin to look like maybe I have excess estrogen. Maybe excess estrogen related to progesterone creates a certain pattern of human behavior and so forth, which would be not conducive for the thriving of my life and my relationship. You're not even told that as a possibility.
Yeah.
You're told that CO2 is this toxin. Meanwhile, I'm experiencing, you know, information and experience incarnationally that CO2 actually can help you thrive and is actually the crown jewel of your metabolic process in your body. You're not going to hear that in any alternative. Very rarely are you going to hear any alternative health podcast or conventional mainstream podcast or TV show or anybody tell you anything positive about carbon dioxide, let alone that it could be a key thing to help unlock a tremendous amount of disease and mental problems that people have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
maybe we got to get you, Shannon. I want you to start Meduna's mixture labs again. Go study Dr. Meduna's research with CO2, using that to cure people's sexual afflictions. He was curing people's degeneracies of the mind for adulterous thoughts, things like atheism, nihilism, degenerate behavior, greediness, depression, all kinds of stuff, using an inhalation of 30% CO2. Now, I'm not saying to try this at home, folks. This needs to be done in a safe, clinical, legal, everything way. I'm just saying that was actually the way science was being conducted in mainstream journals in the 1950s and even previous before that. Before America lost its ever-loving mind when it thought that it became the leader of the world, when in fact it became the world's controlled and duped and manipulated Rottweiler by other people, you know, England and European powers and so forth. So,
yeah. Well, sir, you got any last words, man?
So I think everything that needs to be said has been said.
Yeah.
And just want to mention that you get uh, the movies and everything that we watch, we are being lied to when we are told that testosterone is the thing that causes men to be angry and aggressive and all of that. No, that's what David said. That's excess estrogen, not testosterone. Testosterone will actually, the more that you have it, it will actually make you more like Jesus. You know, much more focused, determined, and calm. You know, it won't make you into a crazed lunatic. So the problem that we are seeing today is because of excess estrogen, not because of testosterone.
you know, look how the kingdom of God is like children. Children do not hold grudges. Children do not go through a litany of things you said about them 2 years ago or 3 years ago when they're young enough to not be poisoned yet. So little children give you a window into the kingdom of heaven. What is the kingdom of heaven? Is the kingdom of heaven a place in the clouds, or is it a state of being between human beings?
Yeah.
So if the kingdom of heaven looks like the way children act, then maybe you should think about what their blood work typically looks like when they're thriving in the way people like children to be.
Yeah.
Forgiving, playful, gregarious, confident, bold, not neurotic,
Yeah.
not, you know, willing to do great adventures, willing to play. I want to play all day. Do you? That's what a child wants to do. They want to play all day.
I like
Everything is fun.
kids don't
When you
like
watch
that.
a child, when it's time to get up in the morning,
Yeah.
unless they've already been impaired by stress and school and waking people up at 5 a.m. to mess their head up and all this terrible crap. When you see children in their natural state, they wake up laughing and giggling.
Mhm.
Life's good.
Mhm.
Jesus said that's what kingdom of heaven will look like. So the future human adults on this planet are going to look literally like that when they wake up. So why not try it now? Wake up giggling and laughing
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
how good life is, because that's what a high thyroid state of mind is. And if your mind believes it, you don't have to eat the healthy food. Your mind will get there by sheer force of will, because you have a will made in the image of God, the creator of the universe.
Mhm.
So that's the backup for those who are listening right now and you're saying, I don't want to eat the raw carrot salad. I don't want to drink the milk like Surit's doing. I don't want to drink the orange juice like Surit's doing. I don't want to do all the great advanced practices that Surit's doing to have that smiling disposition that he always has. Well, if you don't have the time and the energy to do it, if you can have the willpower to do it, you can think it in your mind. And if you think those positive thoughts, you can manifest those changes in your hormonal disposition through your mind, through the creative power of your divine image of God.
Mhm.
And that's a beautiful thing. You can do that. That's why people were singing songs like Paul and Silas in the prison,
Mhm.
because they had the state of mind to be able to sustain that joyful energy like they were high on life, which is what the Lord wants you to have.
Mhm.
That's what it means to drink the living water so that you thirst no more. That's what it means to be drunk. Remember remember the story in Acts? They thought those people were drunk,
Mhm.
but they were filled with the Holy Ghost.
Mhm.
So what is a drunken state doing at its best? Makes you happy and fun,
Mhm.
more confident. I'm saying the good version of it. People have other expressions, right? But drinking in its best case steel man position is mimicking childlike joy.
Mhm.
Things are good, things are funny,
Mhm.
people are more confident. They're more willing to take a risk and ask out that girl or whatever if they've had a beer or whatever.
Mhm.
Not that they should use that, but I'm just saying, like, they're showing you little cheap imitations
Mhm.
of what child mind is like,
Yeah.
with the high thyroid function, low estrogen, low cortisol. Now, there's all these things that we're doing in the womb, the way we're eating, that are already, and then genetically, that are switching on things that make it harder and harder for children to have that childlike state.
Mhm.
But it's still there, all things being equal. So that should give us a window that the best is yet to come. The pagans believe that you are healthiest at your youth, and then you slowly just decay because the God of this world is named entropy. But the Christian believes the best is yet to come, and that your body was meant, and your mind and your heart and your soul and who you are was meant to live forever. But that the belief in death as the reigning supreme of our world, entropy, became this something that we believed in. And therefore, what we believe in our head, our body follows with it. And we produce all the chaos, the destruction, the rabid agitation, backbiting, insecurity when somebody else is succeeding. I got to feel like I lost something because they succeeded. Who cares? When you have an abundant state of mind, when someone succeeds and you're not succeeding where you want to be, it's motivation for joy, because there's plenty to go along for everybody in the kingdom of heaven. God's love is not scarce. God's love is unconditional, and it's ever abounding, and it's completely post scarce. It's totally available. And when you live that and you truly believe it, you do become the inheritors of the earth.
Amen. Well, thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Let's do it again.
Yeah, I had fun. It was a lot of it
Yeah.
was a pleasure.
Yeah.
uh yeah, so eager to do this again. So yeah,
Cool.
thanks Shannon for inviting me on, and thanks David for surprising us
Popping up.
with the
Yeah, popping up.
with the with the greatest, you might call it a pro wrestling like run-in, huh? Just get into the match and just
Yeah.
interfere.
Here we go.